Hi there, my name's Ian Mitchell from the This Is Ibrox podcast, a Rangers fan media podcast, just with a preview of tomorrow night for us. I don't think as Rangers fans we come into this as favourites, obviously coming up against a team with the budget and some of the calibre of player that Spurs have. It could be a tough night for us. However, it has to be said that Thursday nights in the Europa League, particularly at Ibrox, is where Rangers over the last few years have really came to the floor. We've been pretty successful, it has to be said, especially some of the ties in that Europa League final run that we had to Sevilla a few years back. We beat teams such as Borussia Dortmund and Leipzig over two legs. We really punched above our weight at times. Even seasons before, teams like Benfica, Porto, they've came to Scotland or came to Glasgow and not left with a win. So these things do play into it. I think from a Rangers fan point, we have a lot of players who are suited to European football, less so domestically, because you can see we'll go into Europa League games with a bit more confidence, a bit more of a swagger in terms of some of our players, and you compare that to what they do some weeks domestically against teams with fractions of the budget of ourselves, let alone some of the teams we're beating, and we just don't turn up. That's evident when you look at the league table. We are third in a two-horse race right now. However, over the last few weeks, we have saw a good upturn in form. We're starting to score goals, which has been a big problem this season. And not even the sense that we've been missing chances. It's been chance creation as much as anything. Very low XG, a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of very boring, sloppy football at times, it has to be said. And when you compare that to how Tottenham got on, just from afar, of course, but you see Tottenham score a lot of goals and concede a lot of goals. Whereas there was a stat at the weekend how Rangers are involved in the lowest scoring games across Scottish football, because defensively we are quite sound, it has to be said. We don't concede a lot of goals, but going forward we haven't been scoring the goals. So a lot of 1-0s in there, a lot of 2-1s and sort of tight performances over the last 6 months or so. And all of this coinciding with the fact that we have fell a lot of points behind Celtic already this season has led to a lot of fans lose faith in Clement. Again, I do refer back, we have got a bit stronger recently, a bit better there, but a big side to that for myself has been the introduction of some players who simply hadn't been given a chance earlier this season or had been injured at the time, namely Danilo and Iain. Now, neither of those are going to feature tomorrow night because neither are in the Europa League squad for us. So it does mean we're bringing back guys who have maybe let us down a few times this season or not hit the form or the heights that we expected them to. Particularly guys like Nadim Badrami and Diomande came in for, I was going to say big fees, but when you consider what Spurs pay for some players, it's certainly not. But for Rangers, it was big fees, and neither have exactly hit those heights yet. I mean, the thing here is that they have performed well in Europe so far this season, as Rangers have as a club, to be honest. We've won in France against Nice, we won against Malmo in Sweden. Again, not exactly shocking results from a sort of fan point of view, because we know what this team can do in the Europa League, but it has been sort of more positive in Europe than it has been domestically, that's for sure. In terms of tomorrow night, I think if you look at the sort of players Spurs have, if you turn up, Spurs can win, or Spurs will win, I should say. Guys like James Maddison, Heung-min Son, these are world-class footballers. Great for us to watch them, considering some of the players we normally have to watch in the league. And if those guys turn up, like I'm saying, they can make a goal happen, they can make a chance. And it does sort of remind me of what happened against Lyon for us this season. Quite a tight game. It was 2-1 going towards half time before Lacazette has put one in the top corner from 30 yards to sort of kill the game. We lose that one 4-1 in the end, which might look a bit harsh on paper, but it just goes to show what that sort of level of player and what that level of team can do to you if you do make mistakes. Looking at Rangers and how I expect them to line up here, it will be a 4-2-3-1. That's all Clement knows how to play, which has been quite a bugbear for a lot of fans this season. I stress it's not been great football to watch for most of the season, yet we've seen the same players in the same roles, that same formation, which, being on Rangers podcast, we spoke about it at length, how that shouldn't be happening. We should be a bit more flexible, changing how we're playing against opponents and such, but it's just not been happening. And that's a bit of the worry for me, is that the guys who have been making us tick over the last few weeks probably won't be, or certainly won't in some cases, be playing tomorrow night. They'll be reverting to type a little bit. So that's the fear. If you look at our expected lineup, it's very hard to call, given how big Sunday is for us. League Cup final against your biggest rivals. That's sort of the main thing for us this week. If we get beat on Thursday night, no one would be too bothered if we then win on Sunday. Whereas if we lose both these games and lose them both heavily, there'll be a lot of fans calling for Clement to be sacked again, which has been a sort of constant noise in the background for a lot of this season, given the poor position in the league, some of the poor football we're playing, that reluctance to change. There's been a lot of fans not happy at what we're having to watch. I say that, if I put a positive hat on, we could win both games or get a draw and a win at the weekend, and suddenly Clement is loved again by the fans. That's just the goldfish bowl of Scottish football. If you're winning games and trophies, you're loved. If you're not, the knives are out. It's just what happens up here. Looking at it from afar, in terms of Spurs so far this season, if I look at the Europa League, Rangers do sit above Spurs, which I don't think many people would have expected. However, it has to be said, I've noticed a lot of the Spurs squads and starting lineups have been involving youth players or fringe players this season. I don't think that'll be the case Thursday night, and a big part of that is this elephant in the room of Ange coming back to Glasgow. He had a very successful time against us and in Scotland in general, it has to be said. It didn't go unnoticed, the fact that he's gone from the Scottish League to one of the big jobs in England. That doesn't happen with players or managers. I was going to say very often, but ever. Really, that's very rare. It just shows how well he done with Celtic to then get the Spurs job. And again, I can only comment from afar, but I don't think he's done a terrible job at Tottenham. Obviously, a lot of results of late have been poor, and that defensive frailty has always been an issue with Ange. Not a problem in Scotland. You can run over teams, you can win games 4-1, 5-1 with a high line, with an aggressive approach. As you guys are seeing, it's very different down south if you are reluctant to change, which seems to be what's holding Ange back at the moment. But I'm sure he'll get a very warm welcome from what will be a loud and noisy and very atmospheric Ibrox tomorrow night. It was Gary Neville, I'm sure, who quoted it saying it was the loudest atmosphere he's played in was a Champions League night at Ibrox. The Europa League nights are no different. A Britain versus Britain fixture, the fact that Ange is there, the fact Spurs are a big team, we know that. Got world-class players in there. We will be up for this. It'll be a very noisy, very exciting game, I think, not only for a neutral but for both sets of fans. I can't recall Spurs coming to Glasgow very recently at all, albeit there's a friendly I believe years ago, so it'll be a nice trip for some of the away fans there. But I think it's got the sort of feeling it could go either way. I kind of touched on it at the start. If Spurs come with the right approach and with the strongest 11, they could comfortably blow us away. But being a Rangers fan, you get used to success on a Thursday night. I don't think we're going to lie down. We'll give as good as we've got. And if we get that first goal, Ibrox will be very loud and it'll be a very uncomfortable place for some of those Spurs players to be, given how, again, only from afar, but how fragile the club looks at the moment. The fans aren't exactly loving Ange from what I can tell. The players seem to be struggling a bit low in confidence given the weekend. But again, I say all this for the fact that 2-0 against Chelsea the other day, when Spurs went 2-0 up, I was fearful. I was getting ready to hide behind the couch and watch the rest of that game because Spurs look great, especially going forward. And that's with some of the players I think that are going to play for Rangers Thursday night. A pacey, direct front line that Spurs could have, that does give me some concern, to be honest. If in terms of look at lineups, I expect Jack Butland to be in goals for Rangers. He always is. The back four could have a couple of surprises in there from a Rangers viewpoint. We saw a lot of talk this week about how James Tavernier in particular, who's been an absolute stalwart of Rangers in the last decade. He's been a great servant, one of our best signings pound for pound we've ever made, it has to be said. But he is getting on a bit. He's probably having his worst season in terms of numbers and stats and just generally how he's playing at the moment. There is a lot of calls to drop him the last few months, which Clement wasn't too keen to do. Go back to that reluctance to change. However, he has picked up a bit. 2 goals in 2. He's getting back to the sort of Tav of old. But even the Tav of old had his defensive frailties. So if he's against Young Sons, Timo Werner, it could be a rough night for Tav. But I do expect him to play. The rest of that back four will be John Souttar. I would imagine Robin Propper. It has been Leon Balogun of late, but given how important Sunday is, I'd expect Propper to come in here and Balogun at the weekend. Left back could be a 50-50, to be honest, because our first choice left back is Jeffrey at the moment. However, Ridvan Yilmaz has come back from injury, who was first choice previously. So again, with an eye on Sunday, I could see Yilmaz coming in there. And most of the rest of the team does pick itself, given the Hagi and Danilo lack of registration here. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't something on the lines of Raskin and Barron as your central midfielders who'll hound and hustle and tackle and try and get in the face of that Spurs midfield, with three in front of those being Tierney on the right hand side cutting in, Diomande in the number 10 position, who'll be a bit of a goal threat trying to get forward and join the attack, and Nadim Badrami on the left hand side of that, again cutting in, but maybe not quite with the direct nature that Tierney will from the right. And up front, I'm very hopeful it'll be Hamza Agamane, our young Moroccan striker, very raw striker, but you can see the abilities there, the confidence he should have at the moment with the goals he's been getting should be there. And I don't really want to watch Cyril Dessers for Rangers anymore. I think a lot of our fan base have the same opinion, as on paper he's got a lot of goals and some important goals in there, it has to be said, but he's just not got the link-up play, he's not got the awareness, the running, the pressing that a Hamza Agamane can give you. So that's my expected lineup. I think we'll have a lot of goals in this game, to be honest, because we've started to find our feet in an attacking sense. Spurs bring such an attacking threat, you would be surprised if it was a low-scoring affair here. And in terms of predictions, I'm always going to back Rangers, especially on a Thursday night, so we'll go 2-1 Rangers for that.